So how you been, man?
Chill, man.
Chill?
Semi-retired.
Semi-retired? You're still working, right?
Here and there.
Last we chat, you were working on the 2023 report for your company, right?
Yeah, we did.
What's the name of the company?
We have no company.
What is it? Collective?
Yeah,
A DAO?
a collective.
It's a collective, okay.
Yeah, it's called Team Rocket Research.
Team Rocket Research, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
And then actually last time we talked, it was when the whole scandal with SBF,
Yeah, that's
not SPV, a lot of
It's
SPs
like-
coming around.
a long time ago, right?
Yeah, it feels like
on
forever.
the crypto timeline, it's quite long ago.
It's super long. It's but only been 6 months or so, or less than that even, right?
I think it's 7-8 months now.
7-8 months now.
And since then, we had the banking collapse, which is still ongoing, right?
Yeah. Well, apparently still ongoing, which we don't know what's going to happen to that.
Well, we'll see.
But it seems like at least in the news cycle, investment cycle,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about actual crypto prices, but it's been very quiet, right?
Yeah, and now I have friends who just, ask me if it's the right time to sell the stocks. So they have been invested in the stock market, and they have seen the portfolios dropping like 50%, and they're like, you know what? Maybe I should just sell everything and put it into my business, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. Maybe it's a good time to sell.
What about you personally? Your positions?
I'm still holding it.
Okay.
We do like a routine housekeeping, we sell what we think it's not going to come to fruition. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is still to stay invested.
Stay invested. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think the whole macro environment changed, right? So I think the paradigm has shifted. Probably most likely interest rates are going to persist, right? So
money is going to be more expensive, right?
Yeah.
Cost of capital. So you don't have VCs flinging around huge amounts
yeah,
moving forward, I think, which was the norm, right? Like before, everyone would be like, oh, SoftBank is invested like 9 digits here and there, and it's like a norm.
yeah. Of course that's the norm, but everything seems to have shifted in terms of risk capital to at least there's a new narrative, AI, right?
Yeah, but I think, for example, in Southeast Asia, people will have to grapple with, a lot of startups being scams in the end.
Yeah.
Because now we see news of, founders who raised like hundreds of millions, like even in the US, right? What was this startup? This startup that was sold to JP Morgan.
I don't know. I have not been following the
And
exam cycle.
it seems like they faked the numbers, right? They
Yeah.
didn't have like 4 million actual users,
I remember. I vaguely remember this.
right?
Yes,
It was
yeah.
like a
This was like-
fintech company.
Yeah, I remember this was in a news cycle at least 6 months ago or something.
Right,
Yeah,
right,
yeah.
right. So I think it's bad news if you are in Forbes or Fortune, 40 under 40 or 30 under 30. Don't get on that list.
Yeah, that was the big brouhaha, right? There was all these guys in Forbes 30 under 30, and then some high percentage of them were involved in scams or under
Right.
investigation. Right?
So SBF was definitely on that list. So yeah, I think the whole macro environment is very uncertain, but in a sense, I think people who have been in the markets might have seen it coming.
yeah,
So I was working with this company that was funded by YC, back in Dubai. That was 2020.
yeah, construction company.
Yeah, construction tech company. And, the first time they heard about COVID, that was when they started to cut salaries. So, and then fast forward to 2022, 2023, people are starting to pitch now, oh, you know what, my salary is halved, or I'm losing my job. And, man, what's so unusual about that? Like, you had a job since COVID, so you should
Yeah.
be thankful, right?
Oh yeah.
Because things are just getting worse, after COVID. And, people were kind of bullish because, oh, the economy is opening up again. But, I think if you look at e-commerce businesses,
Yeah.
obviously the volume has tanked because people are not staying at home anymore.
Sales volume. You're talking about revenue from the companies, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think what worked in COVID may not be working right now. And I think, with AI entering the picture, I think that's going to change even more rapidly.
You think so?
Yeah.
I mean, what aspect though? Because there's two camps of thought here where
Right.
a lot of the academics, I mean, at least I think from an academic standpoint, they talk more in terms of actual AGI actuation, like we're reaching AGI. But then I guess you talk about applied AI and what that can do, right? I think, and the main problems with AI are data and the actual hardware, the architecture, right?
Right.
And I think there seems to be enough where that can be extended very far, but we don't know the effects of that
Right.
or how that really changes the world. And at the same time, it's not as, we're not like leaping to a sci-fi future where we have like a Jarvis or like a talking AI to you yet, right?
Well, I think if you are an AI startup right now, you're probably too late to the game because, the best example would be Mark Zuckerberg, right?
Yeah.
At the height of the metaverse, everyone in crypto was talking about the future, which is the metaverse.
Yeah.
And then he decided to do it. And then what happened, right? People got fired.
Well, yeah. I mean,
Facebook's stock
they weren't
tanked,
lacking.
right?
They weren't lacking in cash.
So I
to begin
think,
with,
any new startup in this space, would be quite fortunate to be raising funds right now. But maybe if you were funded by your own government,
yeah.
that might work.
Yeah.
But I think it's generally too late to be entering the space if you're looking for investment, right? Because it has taken like so much time for open AI to come to this, level of maturity.
I'd have to disagree though, because I think that was shared in Momentum Works group, right? The chat with all the AI companies that were funded. I mean, all the funding is funneling into there. And will it be like the last cycle where a lot of these don't pan out? Probably.
Right.
But I do think there's still room. I mean, if you're trying to build an open AI, yes, I agree. It's too late for that.
It's too late. You're behind the curve, right?
Yeah, but there is enough. I think at least my thesis would be there's enough room where you can build a defensible moat in the way you train these large language models, right? On the actual, it's gathering those unique data sets. That's what causes the AI to hallucinate. And I think I invested in one of these companies. I'm looking at a second company in the space. So I think there is room possibly, but by and large, yeah. If you're trying to, if your thesis along this, using the same architecture, the same language models, then yeah, I think you're right. By and large, it's too late. And ultimately, what the only defining thing between OpenAI and why it was successful was just money, right? Ultimately.
Right.
So it's just throwing money. And even the way it was trained, it was just like I think the times of the piece where it's just using like Kenyan labor where they pay them $2 an hour or something to train the models, right? So it was something crazy like that. But let's talk about crypto, and then does that shift? Because AI is taking a spotlight,
Right.
what has changed? Are prices still down? Where's the innovation, or what are you investing in? Because I remember at the end of 2022, you were talking about the gaming space.
Right.
I guess there was some overlap to metaverse. I don't remember really. And then you were thinking how that evolves into 2023, but it seems that that's just completely out of the window now, or at least the conversation.
Well, we're just entering Q2, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing that more games are being launched this quarter. In fact, most of the projects that we have invested in, they have launched already. So either open access or live beta. So I think that's a good sign. I think more projects will enter the fray. But games, like projects that are just launching right now, I don't think they will come to fruition like even in this cycle, because the typical, game development cycle would take, easily a year or a year and a half, depending on how complex the game is, right?
Yeah.
So that's that. And I think one more thesis that we have for 2023 was the decentralized casino thesis, which actually played out.
Oh, really?
So stake.com, right? Which is
No, you gotta help me explain that.
so it's based in the US, and I think people know stake.com because of Drake, right?
Yeah.
So he's heavily promoting stake.com, and the thing about stake.com is that people actually top up their account using crypto.
Yeah.
So that's how they actually grew like really large and rather quickly as well. So I think this space is definitely booming, and we've seen quite a few projects like catching up in this space. Yeah, so we're pretty excited about that.
Okay, so you've shifted your at least where you're investing is from. So you're still looking at games?
It's still a game, right? I mean,
Okay,
like
it's still a game.
I mean, gambling is just a category under gaming. I mean, that's how we would place it, anyways.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, I see what you mean. So it's still gaming. So, but the main focus within gaming is this kind of
Right.
casino type.
I mean, we had our doubts at first, but we just do what we have done. I've done in Web2, right, which is to track the basics, right?
Yeah.
So what is your monthly traffic like? What is your bounce rate?
Yeah.
How long do players stay on your page? And I think that is the fundamentals that a lot of crypto projects are not looking into, right?
Really?
Yeah. So surprisingly, like when you go on Twitter, and we do a lot of research on Twitter, right? People tend to shill projects that they claim has traction, but when you check the traffic, it's like 5,000 visits a month, and this project that we're talking about, they are doing 5 million visits a month.
Yeah.
Easily more than 1 million players, and you can track like a lot of information on chain anyways. So like how much deposits they have taken, and yeah. So we just base our investment thesis on that.
So where's the gap then? Because I mean, are you saying this because investors in the space are not sophisticated, so they don't look at these kind of things, and so this is kind of like a short-term advantage you guys are taking advantage of?
I think maybe the market has somewhat or is somewhat shifting, because a lot of projects that have taken off in the past is mainly based on hype.
Okay.
Right. So when
That's true.
influencers talk about it, like for example, Dogecoin, right, being the most infamous, because when Elon changed the logo on Twitter, the bluebird to
flew, right?
Yeah, I mean, it flew. And now we're moving towards more fundamentals.
Yeah.
Because we are a huge fan of projects that make real revenue, and the truth is that when you actually track these projects that make real revenue, many of them have not actually run. In fact, I mean, in terms of price, right? Like they are way behind. So by and large, I think a lot of projects in the space are still very much driven on hype. But with games and stuff, I think you have to look at the fundamentals. So at the end of the day, how many players you have, how many site visits do you have? So I think it's all coming back to the fundamentals again. And I think, our thesis is somewhat on point.
And were those the main findings on your end of your 2022 report? Was just to focus on gaming, look at fundamentals, essentially just how a business runs. But
well, we are very GameFi and DeFi focused, as a collective.
Okay.
So the reason behind that is because you can track all the information. It's not really dependent on the founder of the project to hype it up, right? Because, for example, I think in the early days, people got really hyped up about Ethereum because of Vitalik, right?
What is that?
Vitalik Buterin, the founder.
Yeah.
And then later on, people got really hyped on Ethereum because of the ICOs.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true.
And then after that, it was DeFi. So you essentially have to build value on your project.
Yeah.
Instead of just it running on vaporware, right?
Yeah. And so what, I guess, and that value is just the enjoyment of the game, or is there more ties into the real world or actually making real money or like,
Yeah, so it has to be revenue driven. So how much fees do your project actually bring in?
yeah,
Not so much about how many followers you have or how much your coin is traded on the exchanges, right?
yeah,
So I think that eventually there will be a shift towards that, and I think we have seen this in the layer ones and layer twos, right? So I think just last year, you had a lot of people who have gone crazy, like, oh, you know what, Ethereum is going to lose to
yeah,
other protocols like
Solana,
Solana
yeah,
and Avalanche and stuff like that, right? But now we're seeing value flowing back into Ethereum. Why? Because you
yeah.
have the most developers. It's a very wide developer base. People build on Ethereum.
This has nothing to do with the fundamentals of blockchain in terms of what distributed networks or security or because I mean in theory that was why everyone was pushing to Solana, right? 'Cause you get the amount of transactions you do is greater.
Well, the reason why Solana and Avalanche actually even took off, right? Number one, they were actually VC backed,
Yeah.
so they had like huge amounts of money to back them in the first place. And then second was that they actually airdropped and they gave a lot of incentives by means of printing more tokens.
The typical VC type.
Right. So it's just
strategy.
like throwing money to get growth, right?
Yeah.
But now that the money is sort of or almost running out,
Yeah.
then your growth is stalled,
Yeah.
right? Whereas if you look at Ethereum, they have pretty much, grown in a way where you could consider it to be organic,
Yeah.
right? Because people like building on it, therefore they're putting all their resources onto that,
Yeah.
rather than, let's say, a team from one of those leading L1s come to you
Yeah.
and say, hey, we'll give you like, $1 million, could you build on our platform,
Yeah.
right? So we'll see.
So what's the? I mean, if this is the case, I mean, there's of course the blockchain element of Ethereum,
Right.
it being more stable. It built tangible value first, I guess, to some degree, right? It's more transactions than Bitcoin, right? Most developers are there first, kind of a moat. But then if you put this combined with GameFi, how does this differ from traditional game studios, traditional gaming companies? Isn't it just the same thing, or like why do we need this layer of blockchain? What does it actually bring to the table? Why does it matter?
Well, if you look at the most popular games out there today, right? Let's say Counter-Strike, for example. People spend hundreds of millions of dollars.
Is it that much?
Yeah, it's that much.
Hundreds of millions.
On skins, on
Yeah, I believe. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I played
everything, right?
Yeah.
So that's only one game. So people are already transacting value, in these, Web2 ecosystem
Roblox.
games, right? So they do spend a lot of money already. But the thing is that when they leave the platform, they cannot bring those items that they have purchased with them,
Yeah.
right? So there is no ownership. And I think the same goes, in terms of like, let's say, for example, in the context of social media, right?
Yeah.
You cannot bring your account somewhere else. And, in fact, if you were found to be against community rules, you'll be banned, right?
Yeah.
So you might have spent a lot of money to build your
Yes.
influence, and then you get fucked.
That happens. Or like if you get hacked or something like this, you can lose all
Right.
your value. Yeah.
So I think that is the value that Web3 gaming is, bringing into this space. I think mainly ownership and the ability for you to
Portability.
actually, to set, like you could sell it on chain without anyone's permission, right?
Oh, I see.
Like if you own, say, for example, items in a game,
Yeah.
you could sell it and you don't need the permission of someone to do it.
Well, it's less friction.
Less friction for sure.
Because I mean, you can still do that through auctions on Web2 today, right?
Well, if it's not permitted, let's say later on, because there is no one else to basically, I mean, okay, so who owns Counter-Strike? The publisher of the game, right?
Yeah, Valve.
So they can decide to basically step in and say, no, you cannot sell.
True. Okay, so yeah, so basically, it's more of a permanent economy.
right? So I think the Web3 gaming economy will be very interesting. And I think we have seen the first of its kind in terms of Axie Infinity.
Yeah.
I mean, if you remember that game.
Is it still around? Is it still?
It's still around. It's still around. And
Transacting
I
high
mean,
volumes.
the coin itself, I think, the Axie coin itself, I think, is worth north of $2 billion still.
After the hack,
But
the Ronin hack and
it's
everything.
so Ronin is not really related. It's another coin on another chain, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at the peak, Axie Infinity was definitely like I think 40 billion or something. So it has dropped like 95%. So I think by most estimates, a lot of players have actually left.
Interesting.
Yeah, but they're still around. I mean, they have like healthy amount of treasury as well. They continue to reinvest. But here's the thing about games, right? It could give you a good, couple of years where players just keep coming, or it could just die off like rather quickly. So I think it brings us to the discussion of, so what next after, the layer ones and layer twos? Because I think you could basically equate the layer ones and layer twos to your operating systems, right?
Yeah.
So your Mac OS or your Windows, and it's pretty much it, right? And you have Linux.
Yeah.
So you don't really have that many players, and I think the same thing will be happening for your layers, your layer ones or layer twos. And then what next? It will have to be the software that's built on those on your operating system, right?
Yeah.
So meaning in Web3 speak, it would be dApps,
Okay.
right? But investing into dApps is a lot more trickier. But I think all the information is available out there. Yeah. So meaning how many players you have, how many users you have, how many transactions you have on chain. So it shows how much activity your dApp actually brings in and how much money you actually make. So I think it's more transparent, but it also makes it like more difficult to invest. But that's where I think the next $1 billion or next $1 trillion of value will be created.
Can you explain dApps a bit more?
So essentially, it's called a decentralized application, right?
Yeah.
I think at the most basic level, you allow users to connect their crypto wallet, and basically they're able to perform a couple of tasks, right? They could make payments. They could make payments and then own whatever NFT you have, items that you have, in the game and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that is the most basic level, right?
Yeah. And so you're describing basically the infrastructure needed to power gaming,
right?
In the Web3 space, essentially.
Right.
And how is that currently looking? It's very fragmented right now.
Mm-hmm.
Is it pushing towards centralization where because I guess what your thesis is saying is you envision a world where all games are connected by some layer.
Right. I think it is already happening. So I think by and large people do. I think most people would use MetaMask these days, right? So that is already a standard, being set.
What is MetaMask?
MetaMask is a crypto wallet,
Okay.
Which you could set up on your phone. You keep the seed phrase for yourself, and then you can immediately load crypto onto it, right? It's different versus having an exchange wallet like Coinbase, for example, right? Yeah. Because Coinbase is centralized.
Yeah.
You need to be wary. For example, if the exchange would go bust, right?
I think we talked about this last year, where there was a shift from the centralized exchange wallets unto these where you have your own key.
Right.
And then, so it's harder, as long as you don't lose the key, it's hard to actually lose your wallet.
Right. But I think traditionally the exchanges are very useful, especially when you're transferring crypto tokens. If you want to store Ethereum and Bitcoin and whatnot, I mean, storing it on an exchange could basically lessen your burden, right? You don't have to worry about losing your seed phrase, for example, right?
Unless if you were...
Right, but as you enter the Web3 economy, let's say you're playing games or you're trading NFTs or you are, say, interacting with a DeFi protocol, where you want to stake your coins and earn interest on it, right?
Yeah.
Then you would need like a wallet like MetaMask,
Okay.
because the exchange is not able to provide that kind of
Well, because they don't
Yeah.
they don't list it as
right.
one of the coins to trade, I guess, right?
Also, I mean, like storage of NFTs, not many exchanges are providing that ability.
There were, I mean, before the whole like, can you say bubble popped?
Bubble.
There were those NFT marketplaces that were
Right.
being developed, and so what happened? They're gone now, or?
So I was quite active in this NFT marketplace called OpenSea.
Yeah, OpenSea.
I was also trading a lot on.
The volumes were huge on that.
Yeah. There's this NBA Top Shot.
Okay.
I think like people who go crazy over basketball,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they could relate, right? So these two actually NBA Top Shot was the most centralized,
Yeah.
because you could sell NFTs, but at one point you couldn't withdraw your money, your fiat
Yeah.
value, and it would take days, and you need to do like KYC. So I mean, they had that. I mean, those issues. But yeah, fast forward today, I think a lot of users have left the platform.
Yeah. So no value. Okay. So you're saying that infrastructure is gone, but I guess it's more useful if gaming really does take off then, right? Because then those kind of platforms would have real inherent value.
Well, it either has to be games or decentralized social media is also developing right now. Because if you look at the history of the internet, so if you imagine that you have a computer, you have Windows, you have Mac, and then you have the internet,
Yeah.
right? But before the internet, you had games,
Yeah. Games was
right?
huge.
And you had applications and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
So if you take that into account, then the next logical move in this space would be to look out for emerging social media that's built on Web3.
Yeah. Okay. What is your probabilistic gut bet? What do you think probabilistically is more realistic to happen first? Or what's going to be the big push first, games or more social media and Web3?
I think it will come like together, right?
Yeah.
Because I think the community, especially the Web3 community, although Facebook and Google have less restrictions now to advertise like crypto and Web3 projects, it still isn't like friction free, right? You have to like, pass certain KYCs and jump through a couple of loops, and it's just not native enough. So if a new platform were to come, it would definitely take like a huge chunk of the market share away, and running ads for native Web3 people will be much easier. You get the right target audience too, right? I mean, in the beginning.
In theory, it's like all perfectly on a blockchain if you have access to the data, right? Yeah.
So in the beginning, what helped Facebook take off was games, right? The Facebook games.
It was a big part of I
Right.
guess
So it could be a
yeah.
merge, like decentralized social media paired with games, because there isn't a dominant DApp store today.
Yeah.
So it could be a combination of everything.
I don't know if like history repeats itself in the same way, but I think human behaviors do. And if you think about when we were, at least our generation, not Gen Z, right? When we were starting out with games, identity is largely divorced. In fact, you have a fake name, right? Anonymous names or avatars, right? And then you have your gaming name, which is nothing tied to the real life. And that's probably because by and large, back then the internet was wide open, like the Wild Wild West. And you could actually blog openly too. Like now you would never think someone blogs openly about their personal feelings, but like, or write on people's walls, right? Like everything's closed off now, and like so, it seems that gaming was there first, and then with the rise of social media, then identities form around social media, which was very open, then became more closed and private now. So it seems it could coincide together, but I think. If it were to follow.
And then after social media came, I think before you could actually transfer value already, right? Like you had a couple of internet-based money transfer companies, I think, right?
Yeah.
Like eCash and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then after like social media blew up, and then came payments.
Yeah.
So I think then it might make the payments part of crypto much larger,
Yeah.
and making DeFi relevant again.
Interesting. Yeah. It's hard to say, but
Because you don't have enough people working in Web3 today, right? You don't
Still,
have
yeah.
people like investors, like people who call themselves as investors. They probably have like less than a couple $100, stored in their wallets.
Yeah.
And you don't really have a real economy that way, right?
Yeah.
But once you start to make your living, let's say on social media, on decentralized social media, or by playing Web3 games, then you have like real savings, and that's when the real need for decentralized finance comes in.
Yeah.
So you first need to build the economy,
Yeah.
and not like the sham economy that we had before, right?
Yeah.
Like ICOs, they would cash out into the bank accounts anyways,
Yeah.
and then they don't work on the project.
Yeah. So I have two questions then we can probably wrap up.
Right.
But I'm thinking like, so does that mean you still continue to focus on gaming? And I mean, like, has anything changed then from last year till now, or what has changed? And then does is your focus fully into Web3 still? Is it still going to be as big? Are we just on an off cycle where it's just like a little hiccup and then we're going to see another surge again? We're just waiting for the next breakout, and what would that kind of be?
I think what has changed is our faith in the centralized exchanges. So I think last year, many of us had like huge amounts of money, stored in Celsius and
Yeah.
FTX, but fortunately we removed it, right? Like a couple months before they went bust. And today, like we went fully on chain. We're not storing it on any exchange unless we need to trade it.
Yeah.
So that has changed, but I think by and large, we still find a lot of value being created in terms of semi-decentralized entities, right? So projects that come into the space, not fully decentralized yet.
Yeah.
They're partially centralized as well. I think that is good, because right now in this space, there is a lot of debate on, okay, so if you are a decentralized project, how do you manage your team, right? Like, so people like to talk about governance these days. If you
Yeah.
have like enough tokens, you could vote for certain actions.
Yeah.
But, we have seen so many projects like trying to vote on even the most minute detail,
Yeah.
which doesn't make sense, right? Because then your speed of execution would be like really slow.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there needs to be a good mix. It's just like, if you have a kid and you want your kid to grow up, you cannot give like 100% freedom for your kid first, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's how like projects should develop anyways. It cannot be like from the get-go, you are
Yeah.
fully decentralized, community voting 100% of the time, right?
Yeah, you won't get anything done probably.
And then again, because even if you have a good governance, like behind your project, if you don't have like a good team to execute on that,
Yeah.
it's still like it's meaningless.
Yeah.
So I think that has changed for us, and I think, but the thesis is still relevant. I think
Yeah.
we're still looking for the next billion people to enter the space.
Yeah.
Either gaming or social media, right?
Okay.
I mean, where else can you generate value? On the internet.
AI.
Well, we had like a few AI coins that made a run. We made like
really?
some money on that.
Oh,
but,
interesting. Okay.
I mean, it's just like generative art.
Yeah.
And then the coin, just ran up.
Yeah.
But it's because of hype as well,
That's
right?
So you're just trading it really for quick.
Yeah.
But
But that's not really our focus too.
But overall, you're still well positioned, well capitalized, despite the drops in value
Yeah,
of
and
the coins.
hopefully, come like Q3, we'll start like looking for more VC deals again.
What does that mean? Like what VCs investing in the space? Or,
Yeah, investing
okay.
like, into like pre-seed or angel.
Are you connecting with the VCs now and talking with them? I think that's an important conversation to probably have.
No, actually, we just want to speak to the projects directly.
Okay, so I guess
like
that's where
our
your advantage
team,
is.
Our team would just like reach out to whatever projects that are, like pretty new. We'll contact them on their
Yeah.
Twitter accounts
Yeah,
and
yeah,
stuff.
So it's like early stage. You
Right.
focus on building the deal flow, the pipeline,
Right.
kind of see what comes through when you get traction. Then probably
Our reasoning behind this, like why we would only start in Q3, is because so we want to wait for like the previous generation of like funded projects to die off first, or to see like
get rid
who's
of the
still around.
noise. Yeah.
And then, we expect that these projects will also need time to build. And
Yeah.
let's just assume that 2023 wouldn't be the bull market that we all imagine.
Yeah.
Or let's say it's around mid of 2024, after the Fed pivots, etc.,
Yeah.
going into massive money printing again. Then, if the project were to take off in 2024, then you will have to invest by Q3.
I mean, in theory, even earlier. I mean, I think this kind of product market.
Well, too
fit
early
is-
then, if you're talking about like pre-seed or seed stage, you
Yeah.
probably run out of funds before you even manage to launch,
True. Okay, so you're really trying to time this.
right? So I think Q3, maximum Q4 is like a sweet spot.
And how do you think about in terms of the right amount? Like, how are you pairing risk, investment size, and deal flow? Like, how much do you let into your portfolio?
It's hard to say, man. Do you have a good formula for that?
I mean, I think about it a lot because, well, one, because I don't have enough in my net worth to get the numbers. I ideally want to have to go for quality, and I swing when I only sure.
Yeah, but the thing about quality, right, is that I think it should be very entrepreneur focused. Right?
Yeah.
So you invest in
agree,
a good
yeah.
person, right?
It's more like, are you willing to go on a journey with this person because of the quality of the person?
Right.
I mean, because it's going to twist and turn, and they might run out of money still, but it's
Right.
but like they have what it takes because you kind of seen it so many times, right?
Right.
And at least for me in my network, that's what I kind of focused on. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking to people who are not in my network, and I'm tempted to make my first investment outside of my network. So that might be interesting.
Ka-ching.
I don't know. It's statistically all my money's gone already, probably. So but that's the nature of the game, right? So last question then. What? So from last year up to now, then what? I think one of the more interesting pieces would be regulation. Then, where has that? Like, what has evolved? What has changed? And where is it heading? How's it going to settle in with the current Web3 ecosystem?
I think the momentum has probably shifted from the west to the east, because in June we're fully expecting for Hong Kong to launch their first crypto exchange after so many years, right? Because China was the first to ban.
Same country, isn't it?
Yeah, China was the first to ban Bitcoin, right?
Yeah,
I think
they
that was
were.
like back in 2016 or 17.
How does that work if China banned it, but then Hong Kong is
Well, they
pursuing it?
banned Bitcoin trading, but they didn't ban Bitcoin ownership.
I see.
So I think a lot of exchanges have applied for licenses to operate in Hong Kong. And I think that might be the bigger news that people have missed,
Okay.
because VC money will probably come out from there moving forward.
At least risk capital from the region. Do you think Western VC money can actually do that? Because if it's Hong Kong, it's technically China. And with the the geopolitical environment today, it's a bit awkward, right? Where,
Right.
I mean, is that something in your consideration or?
Well, I mean, if it comes to that.
Well, you think so. I mean, you're talking about you're investing your own money.
Right.
And your net worth, specifically for you, right? So something, it's a variable to think about, no?
Right.
Unless you don't mind.
But I think I'm basically sharing the China news and from this point of view, right? Where if one country or one region decides to go against crypto, like for example, US right now is pretty much anti-crypto, right?
Well, they're supposed to regulate Coinbase, right? Isn't that like in the
Yes,
headlines I've seen?
there are a lot of like lawsuits been thrown around like to so many projects these days.
Yeah.
And if you don't have any money to defend yourself, you're pretty much fucked.
Yeah.
So I think VCs should be worried about that, right?
Yeah.
But if and when Hong Kong opens up, then new money will flow into the space, and I think by and large it will be good for all the entire space, right?
Yeah.
So Bitcoin, Ethereum, everything would start to move up,
Yeah.
because I think it has been quite some time where the market is very focused on what's happening in the Western Hemisphere,
Yeah.
and now it's back here again.
So all the Twitter verse of crypto, they're
You
all
need to start
talking-
tweeting in Chinese.
So the focus is all like kind of Asia, this kind
Right.
of yeah. Actually, there's a few big conferences moving to this part of the world in 2023, right?
I'm not too sure. I don't go to conferences.
Okay, yeah.
The last one I
of my
went
friends
was
told me.
like in
Yeah.
Seoul.
Yeah.
Charged me like $1,000 for a ticket,
Yeah,
and then it was like at the well, we were at a peak of the bear market in 2018, I think. And
Yeah.
the conference was like 25% full.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So what other key insights, or like what can you say that you are worried about with regulation, or like how it shapes up, or like what's your preference? Like,
Well, I think we have seen this, or rather I've seen this in the early days, right? Like 2011, 2012, when
Yeah.
I first started to buy Bitcoin.
yeah.
Governments around the world were like, oh, we're going to ban Bitcoin. We don't like Bitcoin,
Yeah.
stuff like that, right? And,
Yeah.
and it never really left the space, I think.
Yeah.
I think only when FTX went full legit in the US,
Yeah.
there was when everyone was saying that, oh, you know what, crypto could work, right?
Yeah.
But then it went bust. And now regulation is back again.
Correct.
So what we did back then was just to store it in our own crypto wallets.
Mm.
So we can do the same again.
So you're not too, essentially what you're saying, you're not too worried about regulation then.
We're not too worried.
Doesn't it give some type of unlock or benefit or acceleration of adoption if there's some type of regulation though?
Yeah, if China says okay, then party's back on, right?
Yeah. And what, does it affect anything? Like what do you, more noise comes in, or at least more?
I don't
more
think it will
talent comes in?
affect much. I think only projects that are based in the US right now would probably feel the heat,
Yeah.
and they would be probably convinced to move to like places like Dubai, for example,
Yeah.
or to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Like companies will probably move out.
You're talking what in terms of
Crypto specific companies,
Yeah.
like companies who
how they incorporate physically?
who have incorporated there.
Yeah.
They have the team members there, and more importantly, they have issued their tokens. Because if you didn't issue your token, you probably wouldn't have any problem with the
Yeah.
SEC, right?
Yeah, correct.
But if you have issued a token, then
Yeah, you're
pretty
gonna
much
be
the target.
That's true. Okay.
So we might also see like more companies not issuing tokens moving forward and just building the space, providing value. I mean, like, so
Well,
MetaMask has what,
yeah.
millions of users, and they don't have a coin yet.
Yeah.
And people still use it, right?
I mean, that's the best way to probably go about things.
Right.
The-
So just make your profit in crypto, and that's it, and pay
Yeah.
your taxes.
yeah, that's true. And then, like, I guess if things are more clear, when you have really tangible value, then you could issue coins later anyway,
Yep. There's no rush.
instead of doing traditional financing, this kind of stuff.
Unless, of course, you want to go for the market and you want to, get subsidies. And so you just mint your own token and,
Yeah.
pay for your CAC.
So then what's the value prop of getting a VC involved then? Unless it's a shit coin or, a shit project.
Well, VCs, they have connections with, major exchanges, and that could help, increase your profile, right?
I guess so. Yeah.
Because every project's, dream is to get listed on Binance, for example, or Coinbase,
Yeah.
right? Because once you're there, you're hardly delisted, and that's like permanent liquidity for you.
Yeah.
If your treasury has a lot of those tokens, you could continuously sell it into the market,
Yeah.
and fund your business, right? I think that's the key point.
Yeah. Okay.
Because VC financing would, run dry eventually, right?
So it's
Especially,
just an acceleration to like a distribution point would then help.
I don't think like VCs will ever stop getting involved because, although the cost of money is going up right now,
Yeah.
but, you should see most of these, you should see the entry price for most of these VCs, especially when they get like those tokens for almost free,
Yeah.
and then they sell it like for a few bucks or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good money, right?
Well, that's the old pump and dumps. Like that's the big complaint about VC's involvement in this, right?
Right.
It's bad incentives.
So, unless the regulators coming, if you think the regulators are coming after the VCs, then that's going to be bad news.
Yeah. Bad news in that you just remove some element of liquidity or acceleration. Yeah. So, okay. All right, man. Let's just take a pause here. Then we'll thank you for this test.
Get some beer.
Yeah. And, thank you for letting me be the guinea pig on the first test. I think I got some tweaking to do. But yeah, and then we'll catch up again. Yep.
Yeah.
All right.